This is Leading Detection, a Sedulo podcast where fraud fighters talk tech. Welcome back to the Leading Detection podcast. I'm super excited about the conversation today. We're joined by Shimon, and we're going to be talking about fighting fraud in the agentic era, shall we say. Very, very relevant. Shimon, thank you very much for joining us.
Matt, thank you for having me.
It's going to be an absolute pleasure. We're gonna dive straight in. So everyone's talking about agents and the agentic era. Why is it important that we focus on the fraud side of this and talk about this today?
Absolutely. So, Matt, the agentic phase that we are in right now feels we are at the very early stages of it, but every day seems to be an evolutionary step. And I've been in the cyber and the fraud space for the last 20 years. And every time there's been a technology shift, I've seen some massive movements around what does this mean for us who are on the defense side. What is different about agentic and the whole agentic AI evolution that's happened over the last 6 to 9 months is very rarely has the technology come around that is so drop-in ready to be used and operationalized. Even if you go back to, I'm dating myself a little bit. If you go back to the days of cloud and even before that, all of those technologies required a fair amount of technical know-how before you could actually make it operational. What is very different about agentic AI and all the advances that have happened is it's so drop-in ready that even what we in the cyber world call script kiddies can become extremely efficient, productive at their objectives. And so when you start thinking about how this changes the landscape for fraud, it does change the entire conversation. They'll be able to conduct their operations faster. They'll be able to do it at a larger scale. And guess what? They will not have to rely on human patience, which is not infinite, whereas agentic patience is infinite. And so taking no for an answer is going to be built into the system. And so these things really change the contours and how we think about fraud in the agentic space.
Yeah, and one thing that comes immediately to mind for myself is we spend many years kind of teaching the bots are bad, right? And the kind of whole structure has been set up as block bots, whereas now there's this whole revolution of, hey, bots are good, can be good. So when we're switching from bot management to agentic trust management, talk us through that.
Absolutely. And Mac, you kind of hit the nail on the head. This is the change which is sending shivers down the spine of pretty much everybody in this space, be it a vendor, be it somebody who is actually using these technologies to protect yourself, or somebody who just has to navigate through the space of how we have been doing our jobs for the last 10 years around bot management. In 2026, this question is dead. The question is not, is this bot or not, which is what we had been primed to answer. The new question now is this agent authorized what it's trying to do? Is this agent who it claims to be? And even once we verify their claim, are they sticking to the intent with which they came to the platform? So it's all about intent, identity, ongoing trust, and not just blocking automation. To that point, Forrester literally renamed their category around bot management at the end of 2025. It's now called bot and agent trust management. And that rename matters because now your payment processor's bot, an Anthropic agent that's buying shoes for a real customer, a credential stuffing farm, they all look the same on the wire, right? Yeah. And treating them as one single bucket becomes a business killer. Not only does it become a business killer, it does change the entire paradigm with which you had set up your own internal fraud and risk teams. And so this is absolutely something that companies and organizations will need to wrap their heads around, which is the question has fundamentally changed. It's not human or bot. It is they all look the same. Yeah. Are they actually who they claim to be, who they are? And are they sticking to the intent with which they wanted to complete their objective? Because
a lot of companies felt safe with the block all bots, right? That was the buffer, the cushion. That's how it used to be.
Absolutely. We as humans are primed to try and categorize things, right? And if you can put things into two categories, life is simpler. It's bad or it's not bad. And and you can go on about your own day. But now the categories are not just is it good or bad. There's this middle ground where it could be good, but you just don't know, and that uncertainty brings a whole new level of guardrails, a whole
Yeah.
new level of risk policies that you now need to introduce. In fact, I was just reading this article the other day where the number of fraud systems that most merchants rely on today that were detected that were bad behavior, they are starting to categorize agentic commerce sales as bad sales and then creating chargebacks. So these organizations which have built out very robust bot
Yeah.
detection and bot blocking systems are inadvertently stopping agentic sales from happening on their platform. And so being able to navigate this new world is going to be super important. Otherwise, you end up creating business risk for your own organization.
So when we're talking about the defense playbook, have we got to rip it up and start again, or can we kind of evolve and add extra processes on?
Yeah, I like I said, I've seen many shifts happen over the last 20 years. I'm not the one who conforms to throw the baby out with the bathwater kind
Yeah.
of a framework. There are definitely nuances and things that we have learned from the past that need to be brought forward. But there is a fundamental kind of reframing of the problem that needs to happen. And then we need to identify what is it that we can bring forward from what we have learned in the past and what new things need to be done. And the fundamental reframing of the problem is it's not just bot or human, but now you will have agentic AI and agents that will become part of the overall internet ecosystem, and these will be categorized into three main populations. That's how I look at the world. Population one is your agents that self-identify, that come to the front door. They carry the appropriate credentials, have the appropriate authorizations, and they're the ones who are trying to self-disclose. They've got
Yeah.
don't have anything to hide. They don't want to hide anything. And you can create a whole set of guardrails and policies for that population of agents. The second population of agents are the ones that are doing something good for the end user, but may not always self-disclose. Think of agentic browsers. Agentic browsers typically don't self-disclose, but the use of agentic browsers for good user behavior is just increasing. It is exploding day by day. Well, in this case, the agent is not self-disclosing, but it is still doing something good for the end user. What do you do in that case? So that is the second population. And then you have the third population, which the fraudsters just love. That's going to be the population where they're definitely not self-disclosing, but they are not only not self-disclosing, they're trying to actively evade detection because they are trying to get to some kind of a malicious objective.
Yeah.
And so as you think about these three populations, that's where the guardrails need to be set up in an appropriate way. Experian put out a Future of the Fraud forecast report in which they kind of gave this space a name. They call it a machine-to-machine mayhem, right? Where you have bad bots that blend seamlessly with good bots, and once you accept that legitimate agentic traffic is going to grow, you can't just apply the old playbook of blocking automation, because then you may be also blocking your own customers. And so that's where, as you think about these three populations, yes, there are some things that you can bring from the past to the future, the right kind of risk policies, the right kind of guardrails for what happens when they self-identify.
Yeah.
But then as you start thinking about agentic for these non-self-disclosing but good behavior bots, that's where intent classification, intent assessment, and continuous intent assessment becomes more and more relevant.
And where are we on this journey of uncovering the signals and understanding the intent of these machines and bots?
So we are still in the early days. Now, the nice thing though is there's a whole lot of signals that we have been collecting as an industry that we can bring to bear on this new shape of the problem, right? All the things that we have been doing around identifying the use of residential proxies by fraudsters, that's still relevant.
Yeah.
Looking at device identification, seeing if this device is trying to spoof itself. That is still important. Looking at problematic behavior is still important. But now there's this whole new level of intent that we can look at, and that's where behavioral biometrics becomes super relevant. Agents go through a vision reason loop, which means that as they're processing the information, the way they move the mouse, if they are trying to conduct their activity on through an agentic browser or just your regular web infrastructure, the way they kind of go through the vision, reason, act loop is shows up in how the mouse moves, shows up in how errors are made, which are very different from humans. Again, this will change, right? Attackers adapt, technology adapts, but right now we have done some extensive research at Arcos Labs, and we have identified several signals that are indicative of agentic behavior. And so that's where it becomes even more and more interesting to kind of think about the signals that we can use. But then when we think about what do your risk policies look like for your organization, and how do you build the right kind of technical controls that enforce your risk policies, that is still a big question mark. That is still a very, very big question mark. Whenever I talk to folks from the industry, everybody is writing risk policies. Everybody recognizes the need to have the appropriate governance policies, but being able to enable those governance policies, being able to put the right kind of technical controls to enforce those governance policies around agentic behavior is still a big question mark.
One thing that kind of I'm thinking about all the way through this conversation is the economics of agentic fraud, because all these additional layers that we're adding to defense, the costs are going up, whereas the costs for attackers appears to be going down. So is that gap just becoming too much?
So the cost of launching attacks is definitely going to become it's going to become more cost efficient, right? But right now, where we are with the AI infrastructure, it's still expensive to just keep running attacks using AI infrastructure. Right now, most of the LLMs, the frontier models, you have to have some kind of cloud infrastructure that itself incurs a cost. But we are not that far away from being able to just download an open source LLM and run it off your local infrastructure, right? And mobile devices themselves are coming equipped with a fork of OpenClaw. We are already starting to see telecom providers and phone manufacturers moving in that direction. Well, now you have an agent on a mobile device. Well, that starts changing the equation of the economics. But the age-old defense of, if the cost of running your attack is not worth the benefit that you're going to get by achieving your objective, as long as we make sure that the economics for the attacker are not beneficial, we'll keep winning. And so that's where we have invested a fair number of controls, a fair number of capabilities that has to be able to do three things really well. Number one, classify if this is agentic or not. If you can't classify accurately, everything else breaks down. So number one, classify. Number two, make sure that the intent of if it's agentic, then the intent of the agentic traffic is known, and you have the ability to continuously monitor the intent. And then third, be able to understand the provenance of this agentic traffic. Is this coming from a cloud infrastructure? Is this coming from some locally run infrastructure? And put in the appropriate kinds of enforcement mechanisms, friction, so to speak, so that it keeps incurring a cost to agents that are not adhering to the intent with which they came onto the platform, or if they're starting to demonstrate risk signals that just go beyond your acceptable use policies.
Right. And this is dependent on the risk tolerance of the specific company.
Absolutely. And that's where some of the age-old mechanisms that we have built out will still hold. You still need to know what is your acceptable risk if you're a business. Like that is kind of risk governance policies and your risk models will be relevant to the organization. And to really boil it down, to make it super simple, the mental model that I bring to this space right now is going to be a combination of know your agent plus zero trust. So the four questions are still going to be the same. Who built this agent? Who authorized it? What is it allowed to do? And is it staying within those guardrails? So make sure that you have know your agent style controls when the agents are coming in through the front door. And then
Yeah.
once they're in through the front door, apply zero trust principles to the agent as it's moving through the platform.
Because agents are about to drive real revenue, right, on the for businesses. So how do we make sure that we're not blocking the best new customers? Because where's the trade-off there?
Yeah, and that's where when customers are coming onto the platform, they generally don't try and behave in unusual ways. They're not trying to evade detection. And that's where the industry is starting to move towards creating the appropriate guardrails where if you are trying to engage in normal commercial activity, just stick to those standards and there will be a way to trust and verify. There's the WebBot auth standard that is currently being used by a number of organizations. This is an IETF standard. Visa rolled out its own trusted agent protocol. MasterCard rolled out its own agent pay protocol. PayPal has its own agentic AI payment services. And so as you look at this entire space around standards, for the ones that want to engage in what I call your normal commercial transactions, your normal activity, you have to make sure that standards can scale and they're easily accessible by those who want to participate in this ecosystem.
Absolutely. And what about when we talk about AI fraud abuse at scales, account takeover, synthetic identity? Which problem do you think gets worse in an agentic world?
Yeah, as in, unfortunately, classic fraud isn't going away, right? It's just being industrialized.
Yeah.
And this is something that we saw in our own report. So we released a threat actor patterns report at the end of last year, and we saw that still fake account creation is the number one attack type that we see across the spectrum. Synthetic identity used to be expensive, right? That's kind of what you need to create fake accounts. Sometimes you need real PII, sometimes you need real phone numbers, sometimes you need real documents, and those become the seeds for your synthetic identity. Well, guess what? Generative AI has just completely removed that constraint. You don't need that. So it is absolutely industrializing classic fraud. And so what we are seeing is the objective still is the same. New objectives haven't come up, but the ways of getting to your objective have become faster, have become industrialized. And so same thing with fraud farms, right? Fraud farms became quite a common and increasingly common attack vector, which combined human workers and mobile device farms. And guess what? Agentic AI is next. So the fraud farm is not going to go away. It's just going to get turbocharged. And the takeaway here is a little bit uncomfortable, right? Which is agentic AI doesn't invent new fraud. It just makes the existing fraud cheaper, faster, and harder to spot.
So it's not necessarily sophistication; it's just speed and scale that we're going to be faced with.
Speed and scale, and this is a little bit of a cat and mouse game, right? Like that is the battle that we are engaged in ever since fraud became a thing. The digital world just made it easier and more scalable, but fraud has been around for ages.
Forever.
And so
I think it's in the animal kingdom, right? It's not going anywhere.
Absolutely. But the fundamentals still matter, right? Making sure that you have the appropriate standards still matter. Making sure that you have MFA still matters. Making sure that you have your agent authorizations and access matters. Having device intelligence capabilities matters. Having behavioral biometrics matters. But on top of that, now you need the defenses that kind of assume that your adversary has the patience of a machine and the creativity of a human. So that's what fundamentally changes things.
It is hard to predict. Is there any of these? Are there any detection techniques you think will quietly stop working in the next 12, 24 months?
To be perfectly honest, it's too early to tell if things that worked in the past will not work. Now, from a standpoint of just using stock images for CAPTCHAs, that will stop working. right? Like if you look around, there's a plethora of vendors that just use stock images for captchas. Like, hey, tell me which image has a bridge. Tell me which image has a traffic light or a car or a motorbike. Pick your object. Guess what? LLMs are just fantastic at training on that data and then being able to do object recognition. But where they're not good at is spatial reasoning. They're not good at physics. They're not good at being able to identify things that they have not seen in the past. And so that doesn't mean visual challenges are no longer necessary. How you build your visual challenges now needs to change, because the visual challenges of the past were built for a world where machines could not really do really good object detection. So it doesn't work. Well, that paradigm went out of the window. And so that is a mindset that we need to bring, that the fundamentals still matter, but how you design your systems may need to change. And the other kind of thing that I see happening over the next 12 months is maybe the value of individual signals that is currently high may diminish, but they will, but it may not get to the point where it's not relevant anymore. We as an industry will have to start thinking about how do you combine these signals in unique ways, in different ways that we hadn't done before, so that we can get to the appropriate kind of an outcome. So take, for example, combining things like IP reputation with device intelligence, with behavioral biometrics, and then coming to a conclusion around, is this agentic or not? And then applying continuous trust models on top of it to continue assessing, is this agent sticking to the intent with which it came onto the platform?
Yeah. And what do we even, what do you think the meaning of trust will even mean in a world where most actions on platforms aren't taken by humans directly?
Yeah, no, and we started seeing this shift with kind of like the zero trust framework. And I believe that this is some variation or some variant of that framework will become necessary for us to navigate the agentic AI world. As in, trust but verify has been part of so many frameworks. Again, even before computing became a thing, right? And so we'll just have to make sure that we don't forget our history. We don't forget all the things that have worked for ages. We just need to update it for the agentic AI world.
Yeah. And maybe something to start closing out the conversation with is, when this kind of breaks, when an agent breaks a policy or something along those lines, who picks up the bill? Who pays for the?
It's such an interesting question, especially as we think about liability, indemnification. Where do we put fault, or where do we kind of associate fault in this world? And the legal world is also scrambling to figure out this basic question, right? Like, when an agent breaks policy or causes harm, who's accountable? Is it the developer who built it? Is it the platform that deployed it? Is it the user who delegated authority to it? It is a big open question. Now, there are some early signals out there in the market around trying to answer these questions. So the EU AI Act, which started to get formulated last year, is going to require AI systems to make consumer-facing recommendations to disclose that this is being done by an agentic AI system, right? So disclosure that this response or this action is being completed by an agent is going to become central to a lot of these AI acts. California has a similar bots disclosure law on the books, and so the trend line is clear, right? Towards telling the consumer when an agent is acting. But here you see a theme. All of the kind of protections currently are being targeted towards the end consumers, which is the right place to start. So if I, as an end consumer, I'm talking to a service agent, I have to know, is this agentic or not? If I'm trying to complete a certain action, is that action then being fulfilled by an agent on the so we are kind of in that phase right now where most of the protection is being focused on the consumer, rightfully so. But we'll quickly get to that point where what happens when there's agents working on behalf of the end consumer. They're communicating with agents from the digital platform where you're trying to either conduct business or you're trying to post out of social media or whatever it might be. that phase right now is still kind of hazy at best.
Because that's going to be the reality, right? We're not too far off that being status
No,
quo.
we are definitely not too far off from that reality. So the agent to agent interaction came to a head as towards the end of last year, where Amazon sued Perplexity. So the background of the case was Perplexity had released an agentic browser called Comet, and actual users of Amazon wanted to buy stuff on Amazon were using Perplexity's agentic browser Comet to go buy things on Amazon. But it's an agentic browser that does not self-disclose. So when users who are using Comet went onto the Amazon platform, Amazon did not know that this was an agent that was acting on behalf of the end user. No. Well, also Amazon was starting to lose out on being able to display the appropriate kind of ads and having an impact on their overall business. And so it was clear at that point that you're in this world where the end user has authorized the agent to go buy things on their behalf, but the platform on which the actual commercial transaction is happening has not authorized agents. And so how do you deal with that kind of a reality? Well, at least right now, there's a judge provided an early injunction, so agentic browsers from Comet cannot be but that is just kind of one of the more early instances where we'll see agent to agent interactions will need to be formalized, and we'll have to figure out how do we navigate that world.
To kind of close up the conversation, what does that mean for fraud fighting when we've got agent on agent interactions?
So it does go back to three main things. One is really think about the problem being reshaped into this kind of 3-class problem. There's going to be good agents who self-identified. There's going to be bad agents that are just going to try and evade, and then there's going to be this agentic AI traffic in the middle, which is not going to conform to self-disclosure, but are actually not also engaging in bad behavior. And so being able to reframe the problem through that lens becomes super, super important to kind of fundamentally shift how you think about your own controls, which means that your controls now really have to become more intent-based. And this notion of know your agent, make sure that the ones that are self-disclosing have the appropriate expressway into the platform. For the ones that don't have the appropriate know your agent, you have to figure out what kind of risk policies do you have to allow them to continue operating. But this know your agent plus zero trust continuous intent verification is going to become a core part of enabling agents to do things that are good for the business and stopping agents from doing things that are bad for the business, right?
Yeah, double-edged sword.
And the third thing is you still have to keep attacking the attackers' economics. If the defensive posture has to still be, how do you disrupt the economics for the attacker? Which means that there will definitely be some new playbooks that will get written as we think about disrupting the economics for the attackers as they become more and more adept at using AI for their
so much we're gonna learn the hard way, or just as it progresses unravels. But Shimon, it's been an absolute pleasure having you join us on the episode today. What are you excited about? What's coming up that you think is most interesting in the cyber fraud fight against agentic abuse?
So as somebody who's been on the defensive side for the last 20 years, this is definitely one of those more exciting times. It is scary as well, but that just means that you have to be able to come up and think through what does it mean to provide the appropriate kind of defenses in this world. And the thing that I'm most excited about is the shift that I'm seeing across the industry in recognizing this problem early on, and then also recognizing where the gaps are and how do you apply the appropriate kinds of security controls onto addressing these gaps. To be perfectly honest, just even 3 months ago, my conversations around this topic seemed, whenever I was having these conversations, seemed like this is a problem that will happen like 2 years from now. We are talking about things that are a little too futuristic. But even in the course of 3 months, I've seen a massive shift in how the industry overall is recognizing that this is not a problem that's going to come at us a year from now. It's going to come at us very, very, very quickly. And so from things that I'm super excited about is absolutely being able to kind of reshape the problem and think about what do defenses look like in this world.
And if people want to learn more, hear more about what you're working on, where can they find?
Yeah,
Find
absolutely. I do write quite regularly. You can find my blogs on Arcos Labs, and then also on my LinkedIn. Just hit me up. Just look for Shimon Modi on LinkedIn. You can find me there. Happy to connect, as well as definitely check out arcoslabs.com, and you'll find all the blogs that we're writing, and some of the more forward-leaning security research, as well as some of the forward-leaning ideas that we have around how do you fight fraud.
Definitely worth checking out. It's been an absolute pleasure joining us. Looking forward to seeing how this all evolves, and if your predictions stay true. But thank you once again.
All right. Thank you, Matt, for having me.
And to the listeners, until next time, ciao for now. Want to hear more about fighting fraud with tech? Subscribe to Leading Detection wherever you get your podcasts.